This is the April 24th Inclusive and Equitable Leader teaching segment. Well, that will not be the right one. I just had it here. There we go. We'll go right down. Oh, well, just to remind you, we have two more, the end of April and the end of June before we'll evaluate this. And I hope to carry it on. Your feedback will be very important on how to carry it on and what you're getting out of it and what you might like it to do. There's the agreements and our principles and our practices I always leave in there. And today I'm going to present all my teachings are just tip of the iceberg because I decided to do a little salt and pepper, if you will, in a 6-month beta program. But my idea and my recommendation will be to have these little mini curriculums, if you will, mini series of things that we explore as a group into the future. But I wasn't sure what folks were up for. So today I'm going to present a concept and some work that the Equity Center has done on how to create an equity container and a learning agenda for your organization, your team, or what your effort is. In May, we're going to explore some qualities of equitable and inclusive leaders that I've gathered from reputable organizations, and you might have input on that. And we'll end with exploring equity principles that are also from a collective group of entities. So that's our agenda. Last time I did present I know it's not new to many of you in the group, but as we do this work, it's sort of these ahas. And I really appreciate, Renee, what you highlighted for me is a reminder of, again, we all have our own journey and we're all constantly learning and we get these ahas. And the more you do this work, the more how you see changes. What you see, where you see, when you see, the more you want to speak about, learn about. That's why it's a journey. And to me, that's one of the most rewarding part of it is I just continue to learn. And the more that we can, I say, create your own personal journey, learning story, your own inclusion story, your own experiences, your own ahas, and talk about them and share them outside of groups like this, the more we normalize talking about them and the more it becomes okay and not so shaming. And the more we actually carry some of the load, those of us that are not experiencing some of the things our sisters and brothers in the marginalized communities are, the more things that get talked about, get measured, get seen, the more we normalize that. So I encourage you to continue to do that and keep seeing with new eyes. So this model of how all oppression works is just so useful. The place I gave it, the container I gave it to you is colonialism and racism, because that's what's going on in Israel and Palestine. It's what's in our face. And so but you could put any oppression here. You could put sexism here. You could put any oppression here. This is the model of how it works. And what I talked about and shared with you is how the strategy is basically to create a subgroup, educate the masses, and control the thoughts and the narratives and the stories, not only among the masses, but in a different way, sending the same kind of sending the oppressive messages to those that you're trying to keep in their place. And so understanding those narratives and how they're coded and what they really mean, every time I, as a woman, hear, don't get emotional or something like that, what you're telling me is you're not acting like a white male in leadership. And so you're really not included. So I just talked and tipped the iceberg of the mind. And I sent you guys the summary of the narratives for the major races that are over time. They evolve over time, but we could explore them a little further. And I find it really educational and helpful for folks who are not exposed to this at all. They don't really understand what they're being bombarded with and how it's actually working against our collective goals. In fact, sometimes progressive liberal folks cause the most harm using these narratives. But what we didn't even touch on is how this affects the body, because oppression controls the mind and the body and the spirit of not only the marginalized, oppressed communities, but the masses as well, to make it seem like it's normal. And we didn't even touch on how it destroys the spirit. And so your example of the movie around the schools and how Native Americans are brought into schools, it's the classic example of how they were taken away from their families. So their culture and their connections, in other words, their minds were usurped, their bodies were taken over control, violence, all of that is all part of that. And then their spirit is smashed. You disconnect from your culture, your religion, your people, your history, and then you assimilate, into whatever the norm is, and you never actually really ever get to assimilate. These are three different specific assaults, if you will, and they require specific healing, restoration, reparation, etc. And it's, to me, an interesting framework to do this, to really look, okay, I want to work on my body now. I want to work on, it's holistic. So I just wanted to bring that up. This could be one of our many curriculums that we explore. That was last time, and I know it was a little bit heavy, but I did share those narratives, and I would keep exploring them and pay attention to what you're hearing and consuming, and help be a voice that demystifies those, because every individual is unique and beautiful and has a contribution and should be valued as such. So from the Equity Center, they have done, you can check them out. I'll include the research they have done. They did a nice research on how do you actually, what is out there, what is the landscape on how to operationalize equity and inclusion in your organization. And I've been using this model. It's really helpful. They also have excellent services. If you want to bring your team, your organization, you can go through their assessments. You can hire them to do actual work for you, but they have a lot of free things and a lot of things that you can bring a whole team or an organization or a group of people to and learn together. I find them really powerful. So in their research, this won't be knowledge to some of you on the call, but it might be helpful for you to share with others. In their research, they've identified, of course, it's a journey. It's a multi-year process. We need to get out of these one and done, check mark, one training kind of mentalities, and actually create strategies that have measurable, what's measured, gets action on it, that, real tangible work. Again, you guys know this, and being able to willing to risk and act even in the face of resistance. And we are experiencing resistance right now, but I don't want anyone here to lose faith, is that none of this is going away, and there's amazing work being done in the face of this resistance. To me, the resistance is just like two kids in a playground acting out, and it too shall pass, and we will continue to rise. The work is not linear or simple, but it isn't it's not rocket science. But our current culture wants things that are linear and easy and can check off. And that's not what this is about, because this is about who we're becoming. This is about who we are. It's not about what we're producing. It requires a comprehensive look at what and how your organization operates. It leads to fundamental shifts around who, what, and how you do the work, and how you, what's your identity at all levels, the personal, the organizational, and in the community. And it appreciates that organizational power is always not negative. You can harness what's positive about it and use it for good. So none of these, again, are obvious. They just put it together in a nice package. Again, some of you have seen this that I produced, but to me, these are things and words that we've pulled out kind of because we like to deconstruct things. We like to take things apart in order to understand them and work on them and make them feel like we're productive, but they really work together. They're who we are, not what we do. They're about creating relationships that create these outcomes, not a product or a task. So I like to think of these things as strategies or markers or mini outcomes, and they're not they're necessary but not sufficient alone. I have a whole little mini little videos that are on this, because the real goal is creating an environment where we don't need diversity programs. We don't need equity programs, or we're they're natural. We don't need inclusion programs because we actually are living belonging, justice, and liberation and equality. We're a long way from that, but we're on our way. So they talk about, the Equity Center talks about creating a learning agenda. And I have found this very effective to apply to the concept that this isn't a one and done, that you're really creating a learning agenda. And that gives you permission to figure out and gather data and look at what you're doing and learn, which means you're given permission to make mistakes, to risk, to put it out there and try things. It's not about getting it right. It's about continuing to evolve. So up on the right-hand corner is the goals, if you will, the many outcomes. And we're always on this journey of bringing people who have no clue, that are unaware, to the aware state. Those that are aware, we're trying to move them into actual action and allyship and advocacy and words like that. But those actions need to move and evolve to a place that I call alive. I'm not using their exact terms because I want to honor their copyright, but I'm going to give you their material that is free and available. And alive means this stuff is integrated so much into your organization, into your own personhood, that you're in an operation and maintenance. And the kind of data and the actions that you would take and what you do, whether you're moving from the left to the right or in the middle, are very different. And this is helpful to break that down. Within that journey, you're always simultaneously working on the personal level, beliefs, behaviors, values. You're also working on policies and procedures, workflows, retention, recruitment, meetings, all these different kind of workflows, supervision, employee reviews, pay assessments, all these kinds of workflows. And you're always collecting data and using that data to continue to move down that action flow there. Because it's who we are and who we're becoming, you have to include values and cultures, and at the organization level and the personal level. And then you live those values by bringing them into all the workflows and really changing a culture that's centered on productivity to being centered on people and ownership and accountability through living your values. In diversity, there is some value. There's in all of this work, and again, many of you know this, but having the common definitions and having a common language, because many people that do this work do not understand what they're asking and what they're working on in the different bubbles there. So in diversity, you're focused on quantity primarily, and you're gathering data about how diverse are we. And you guys, there's all kinds of diversity vectors that you could be getting data on, but it's really quantity focused. As opposed to when you're working on equity and inclusion, it's quality focused, it's experience focused. So you get the right people at the table, you get a diverse set of XYZ at the table, but are they really included? Are they really, what do they need to be at the table? Are they mentored? Are they brought up? Are they really included? Are there voices in their decisions? Are they part of the decision making and the power structure, etc.? So it's more quality focused. And because of that, the data and the metrics that you would gather is very different than if you're working just on diversity, if you will. You're going to have more qualitative focus groups, qualitative surveys. It's a different kind of data and metric gathering, and a different sort of behavior that you would bring into your policies and procedures. So the Equity Center has, in their research, has identified these levers where you can apply moving folks from unaware to aware to action to alive by gathering data, working on their role in policy and procedures and the personal level. These levers give you as an organization a container to create a learning agenda, like what activities, what data would you gather, what workflows would you look at in these different levers to move your equity container further. And their research has shown that these are the areas that give you a bang for the buck. Now, you and your organization or your effort would need to define what these mean for you, but senior leaders are those, you got to have leadership on board. What is senior leaders for you? What are managers for you? What are the board of directors? These are the leadership and mid-management levels. And what would be their learning agenda to get them a critical mass of them on board from unaware to aware? What kind of data would you need to gather? What kind of training is part of a overall strategy, etc. The community is then your constituents, your stakeholders, your suppliers. It depends on what business and work you do. It's the external community outside of your organization that you work with on all levels. The learning environment is a big category for your staff, your volunteers, the people that you do business with, if you will. It's your investment in them. So how do you bring them in and onto your culture? What training and skill sets, like can you train them in emotional intelligence? Can you get their capacity increase in that ability to have difficult conversations? What investment are you bringing into your staff, your volunteers, your program that increases your capacity for diversity and inclusion and creating this culture and the values that you want to live? The data is its own little bubble. I've talked about that. And then, of course, what organization and culture are you working on? I have worked with many groups, and I asked them. I start with, well, what are your values? Because you can remember in the 90s and the 2000s, the value exercise was to do this little exercise with everybody, slap some things on a wall or on a strategic plan, and they went away. Nobody really lived. It was a performative kind of exercise. But in the age of relationships where we're moving, we are now really wanting to identify our values and actually understanding how to live them. How do we integrate our values and center our values around everything that we do? So again, there's more information, but this is their approach, and I've been using it a bit in my work and sharing it with you. And we can explore it more in a mini series, if you will, on how to actually create this equity container and a learning agenda for whatever scale or program that you're working on. And let me stop sharing. Let me stop recording.